A very critical election in Bangladesh is happening, and its election results will be announced on February 13th. But before I proceed, please watch this video of BJP's Assam Chief Minister. You can also see the statement of BJP's West Bengal head, Suvendu Adhikari, where he says that Bangladesh should be taught a lesson, just like Israel taught Gaza a lesson.
सबक सिखाना चाहिए, जैसे इजराइल सिखाया गाजा में, उस तरीके से हमारी भारत की 100 करोड़ हिंदू, देश का हिंदू हित में चल रहा है सरकार, सबक सिखाना चाहिए, जैसे ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में पाकिस्तान को हम लोग सबक सिखाया.
This video is going to be about these elections, the situation in Bangladesh, and Bangladesh relationship with India. I want to clarify first that there are no fundamental differences between Hindus and Muslims. These are all politically created for specific purposes. Assam's Chief Minister has also made some very provocative statements about Mia Muslims and how they should be treated. He says we should not pay them full wages, we should harass them with fake FIRs, that we should remove them from the electoral rolls, at least 4 to 5 lakhs he has said that he will remove from the electoral rolls. And has said that unless we harass them, they will not leave Assam. India's Home Minister Amit Shah and the overall BJP ecosystem has been generating anti-Bangladeshi sentiment right from 2014 and actually even before that. They have constantly been saying that there are Bangladeshi immigrants, illegal immigrants, and all kinds of sabotage and demographic change conspiracies are being put on them right since 2014. And in fact, since before that, the BJP and its ecosystem has been running a campaign against illegal Bangladeshi migrants, creating a fear of demographic change in India. In fact, the Home Minister Amit Shah has said in Parliament that these termites are entering India and undermining us. But what is the reality? Well, the reality is that in the previous UPA Congress government, nearly 90,000 Bangladeshi immigrants were sent back. And under the BJP's rule, according to their own minister, Rijiju, his statement in Parliament says that only 2,500 Bangladeshis have been sent back. Now, there are many Bengali-speaking Muslims in Assam and in the rest of India. The reason for that is manifold. Firstly, there were no firm borders between Bangladesh and India until 1947. In fact, 2 Muslim majority districts of Malda and Murshidabad were given to India in the partition of 47 so that India could maintain geographic contiguity with the northeast. That is India's Siliguri corridor, or the chicken neck, which joins mainland India to the northeast, which is only 10 to 20 kilometers broad in most points, had been a part of these districts. And in order to maintain that contiguity, these 2 districts were given to India. Now, over a period of time, the population of India has also increased in 1947, and so is that of Bengali Muslims. Yes, it is true that in 1971, both Bengali Hindus and Muslims came to India because of the turbulence there, and the economic conditions also in the 70s, 80s were such that there were inflows and outflows. But since the last 20-25 years, this economic situation in Bangladesh has been reasonably good. In fact, their per capita income is roughly equal to that of India. So there has been no great pressure to come. In fact, there is really no evidence of any influx during this period in which the BJP has whipped up these sentiments. But these sentiments have had a very negative impact on our relationship with Bangladesh. Moreover, control over the borders is under the central government. That is, both the BSF, CRPF, and all those forces there are actually central government forces. In fact, there have been many times firing on people on the border, and many Bangladeshis have died as a result. This too has created negative sentiment against India over a long period of time. So why has this fear-mongering been done? Well, it has been done with an eye on domestic political expediency and electoral benefit for the BJP. That is creating Hindu-Muslim divides, creating fear of Hindu khatre mein, Hindus are in danger. It is similar to the kind of Muslim khatre mein hai or Muslims in danger that was created by the Muslim League in 47 before partition. This pays off rich dividends for the BJP in elections. There are many studies on this. You can Google for your own benefit. But India's government control, or as I call them, Godi media, has been playing up this fear because it is assisting the BJP in its political agenda. It's bombarding us with this kind of propaganda, but when it comes to the facts, it is silent. For example, it doesn't tell us that Sheikh Hasina, who was elected in a free and fair election in 2009, to be honest, but after that, she didn't allow a single free and fair election. She worked a police state which rigged every election after that. That is 2014 election, 2018, and 2024 election, such that the BNP, the main opposition, says that out of its 5 million workers and party members, almost 2.5 million had cases and police harassment. In a single election, 10,000 of them were arrested as party workers and kept in jail. In the case of the other political party, the Jamaat-e-Islami, which is a right-wing Islamist party, she executed its entire top leadership, put thousands in jail. But even for others, her behavior was in violation of every human right. UN reports say that there were more than 4,000 extrajudicial killings under her. Disappearances, torture, thousands of imprisonments. In fact, some of the people who were imprisoned, according to a New York Times article, did not see daylight. BBC also reported that many were kept underground in prisons where there was no sunlight at all. Some people who were arrested had their kneecaps blown off. They had to have their legs amputated. So, with this kind of a atmosphere of dread, it was very difficult for any political life to continue. In fact, that repression finally led to the explosion and people coming out on the streets in July 2024. The immediate trigger was a reservation quota of almost 30% that she had imposed for her followers. It was under the pretext that the grandchildren of the Awami League supporters from 1971 should have reservations. Earlier, it used to be the children of those who had suffered in 71. That's understandable. You know, people had suffered in 71 and their children should get some state benefits. But even their grandchildren, in a country in which there's anyway a shortage of jobs, this led the Chhatra Sanghs, the student unions, to come out on the streets. She repressed it very violently because she controlled the police, the judiciary, even the army. The army chief, in fact, was a relative. Now, when the youth came out on the streets, she ordered the police to open fire. Since the police was deeply penetrated by her party, Awami League, they followed suit, and 1,400 people were shot dead. This was also done by members of her Awami League Chhatra Sangathan, the Awami League student wing. But when killings had reached a point where even the army could not tolerate it, then the army chief went to her and told her, the game is up, you will have to leave, we are not going to suppress or fire anymore. She then fled in a helicopter to India and has been here in India since then, along with many Awami League politicians. They continuously give statements and interfere, and in fact, they even propagate fake videos of attacks on Hindus and other kinds of things. This has created a lot of resentment in Bangladesh that India is keeping her and keeping all of these accused politicians of her party. A judicial commission was set up. She was tried and found guilty. Now, India has not asked her to leave India either, or at least not compelled her. the Indian narrative, and especially of this Godi media, has now shifted towards proving that there is a genocide of Hindus going on in Bangladesh, and that the Bangladesh government is in some ways illegitimate, that the revolution itself was done by the CIA. That is, the CIA managed to bring lakhs of people on the streets. Claims are that there is large-scale killing of Hindus and that Bangladesh is some kind of extremist society. Well, the international media, none of it is carrying this news of genocide. And as you know, international media is quite sensitive on these issues. It very quickly picks them up. So why is Godi media carrying it? First of all, I want to clarify that yes, there have been some attacks on Hindus. They say that 8 or 9 have died in the various political violence and some in anti-Hindu violence also. The context of it is that most of the police was removed after the revolution in August 2024. Why? Because this police was responsible for the 1,400 deaths due to firing that Sheikh Hasina had ordered. Most of the police and judiciary had anyway been penetrated by Sheikh Hasina's people. When this was removed, security became spotty and there was a lot of political violence. In fact, over 300 people have been killed in political violence since August 2024. Now, many of these 300 people were Awami League supporters. And among Awami League supporters, Hindus were a greater number, naturally because Awami League was a secular force. But all kinds of people have died in this political violence. I'll give you one example. There was a student leader called Hadi. He was killed in broad daylight. He was quite anti-India. And his supporters blame the Indian government and RAW for it. And they claim that the killers have also escaped back to India. But this hasn't inherently changed the nature of Bangladeshi society, which is inherently secular, in the sense that their national anthem is by Rabindranath Tagore. Their national poet is Qazi Nasrul Islam, who is a Sufi ball poet. If you see other aspects also, women's labor force participation rate is 38%, more than twice that of India's official female labor force participation rate. And actually 4 times if you look at CMIE data. Jamaat, for most of its history, has never earned more than 8 or 9% of the vote. And only 6% of the seats at its peak. That is only 17 seats, 18 seats out of a total of 300. But anti-India sentiment is increasing for various reasons, as I discussed, because India controls the river waters. There have been a lot of firings at the border by the BSF, etc., which have killed innocent Bangladeshi civilians. India was a big supporter of Hasina, as I explained. And transit trade has been stopped by India. Bangladeshi goods could be transshipped through Indian ports. That has been stopped. Visa issual. A lot of Bangladeshis used to take medical visas in order to come to India. That has been stopped. Also, Bangladeshis are keenly aware of what's happening in India. That is, their press reports the fact that there have been over 200 lynchings of Muslims since the BJP has come to power in India. They report the thousands of demolitions of Muslim shrines, mosques, etc. that have happened over the last 12 years. And in fact, going back all the way to 2002 in Gujarat. So they're fully aware of the way the Indian government behaves, what it talks, calling them, termites, saying that they should be turned into Gaza, and all kinds of things which come from what we have already shown you. So I'll give you one example. In a single demolition in Nu, over 1,200 Muslim-owned shops and structures, houses were demolished. So Bangladeshis are keenly aware of this. What is happening is, through this behavior, not only is anti-India sentiment being prepared, but also a fertile field for the Jamaat-e-Islami and various Islamist parties is being prepared. So the need of the hour is for the government to tone down this kind of rhetoric, to tone down what's happening with Muslims in India, and try to re-establish contact with Bangladesh. Because Bangladesh, as I explained, is critical, with 4,000 kilometers of border, with 56 rivers being shared, with $13.5 billion in trade, with the security of the Northeast dependent on it, including the Siliguri corridor, with the security of the Bay of Bengal, which both China wants to enter and the United States also wants posts here. Bay of Bengal, which used to be an Indian lake, is now in threat. So it is critical. Bangladesh is critical for our security. And because of our long cultural, political, economic relations, it is imperative that this relationship be restored. China has, as I explained, already entered Bangladesh in a big way as an investor, trader, infrastructure developer, weapons supplier. There's a massive drone factory being built near Chittagong, less than 100 kilometers from the Indian border by the Chinese. Chinese have entered Nepal in a big way, as I explained. Over 70-75% of the new cars being sold are Chinese-supplied electric vehicles today in Nepal. So, considering India's relationship with China and Pakistan is on tenterhooks, we don't need another third neighbor of ours, such a large neighbor that to 18 crore people and large security forces to be hostile to us. It is imperative that this relation be fixed at the earliest. Subsequently, relations have kept deteriorating because the Bangladeshis perceive this as a move to undermine their interim government. Mr. Jaishankar went there, our foreign minister. He didn't meet Mohammad Yunus, the interim prime minister. He instead met the head of the BNP, Tariq Rahman, the son of Khalda Zia, who is most likely going to win this election and become the next prime minister. They even reached out to the Jamaat-e-Islami 4 times, Indian diplomats, but haven't met the interim government. Relations kept deteriorating. They cut down visas for Bangladeshis. They have stopped the transit trade agreement where Bangladeshi goods could go through Indian ports. Briefly, even the electricity supplies that Adani Power was doing from India to Bangladesh was stopped. Of course, it's another matter that there have been huge protests in Bangladesh against Adani also because they feel that the deal which was signed between Sheikh Hasina and Prime Minister Modi's government was done at exorbitant electricity rates. And finally, this has reached sports. That is, a Bangladeshi fast bowler who had been selected for the Indian Premier League, India's domestic cricket competition, was not allowed to play. In fact, he was because of the street protest taken out by the BJP and other right-wing parties. They were told that Mustafizur Rahman should not be allowed to play. This created huge resentment in Bangladesh for no real reason. It was totally unnecessary. Then Bangladesh replied with saying that we are not going to play matches in India. Our cricket team doesn't feel safe, but we'll be ready to play in a third neutral venue like Sri Lanka in this upcoming T20 World Cup. But India used its influence over the ICC because it generates most of the revenues for the International Cricket Council, and the head is now Mr. Jai Shah, the son of Mr. Amit Shah, the Home Minister. We put an ultimatum on them and then managed to throw them out and replace them in this T20 World Cup with Scotland. So things are going from bad to worse. So for many reasons, Bangladesh is critically important, but most of all in order to maintain social peace in India. That is, the more Hindu-Muslim conflict is increased in India, it has repercussions in Bangladesh, and then vice versa. And so I think to some extent, the Indian establishment also recognizes this. That is why Foreign Minister Jaishankar visited recently and met the head of the BNP. Indian diplomats have met the Jamaat-e-Islami several times, because if this kind of conflict keeps increasing, it is possible that anti-India sentiment may further increase in Bangladesh. Hindu-Muslim problems, and possibly the Jamaat might even come to power at one day. Not that the path to power for Jamaat is linear or simple. For example, in the past, Jamaat has rarely got more than 8 or 9% of the vote, and at max only 6% of the seats in parliament there. That is about 17-18 seats in a parliament of 300. Because Bangladesh is inherently secular, or if you can't call it irreligious, but tolerant and plural society. Examples of that abound. The national anthem of Bangladesh is written by a Hindu Indian, that is Rabindranath Tagore, even though he died before 47. The national poet is Qazi Nazrul Islam, who was a Sufi Baul poet. Women's labor force participation rate in the formal sector is about 38%. That's more than twice of India's, if you go by the Indian official data. In fact, if you go by CMI data, it's 4 times that of India's. So, Bangladesh is, if Jamaat is becoming popular, It is primarily because it's seen, for right or wrong reasons, as a clean party, as an honest party, unlike BNP and Awami League, because they've been in power, they are perceived as more corrupt. And because the Awami League, sadly, has been banned, even though it actually has a base of about 30% of the population, this leaves room for these other parties. Of course, there are some more extreme Islamist parties also, but Sheikh Hasina actually encouraged them, while she suppressed the Jamaat because there was a political possibility that the Jamaat could become a threat and come to power. But there was no threat from these extremist parties. She allowed them. In fact, she herself spent over $1 billion in building mosques and allowed permission for all kinds of madrasas to flourish. So it is critical for both India and Bangladesh that this relationship be repaired. We not go towards further conflict. The government must repair both the cultural relationship, the political and the economic relationship. And the outreach has to come from India because it is the larger power. And Bangladeshis are feeling aggrieved. They still see Sheikh Hasina here, still making statements. And there are thousands of victims there. She has thousands of victims in Bangladesh who press the government for justice every day. I hope this relationship is restored as soon as possible. Keep an eye out on the elections which are about to happen and the results which will be declared on February 13th. I'll come back to you with those results. So critical are these elections, and so critical is this relationship, because Hindus and Muslims have lived in the subcontinent for now over 1,000 years. We live in every town, in every village, side by side. There are no fundamental problems unless they are politically created. So they must also be solved politically, ultimately, for peace to happen. And India doesn't need more enemies. We already have bad relations with Pakistan and China. We don't need a third neighbor who or whose creation we helped in, as I had explained earlier. This is tragic and is important for every Indian citizen. In fact, when I bring this in front of you, we do this with a lot of risk. We do this when we face a lot of danger. As you know, professors have been banned, professors have been arrested, people have been fired from their jobs, people are in jail for merely protesting and expressing the truth. But we will continue to do this no matter what the price to pay. Why? Because we are patriots. Patriots are different from nationalists. Nationalists believe their country above all else. It leads to feelings of anger, hatred, and frustration also. But patriotism is about loving your land, loving your people, the people who constitute the country. So keep watching, and Jai Hind.